This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, folks. Hello. Welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Shaq Scott. And folks, hello. Welcome. I'm happy. I know you're happy. If you're not happy, we're going to make you get happy because we got sports and we got you covered here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Like I said before, I'm your host, Shaq Scott. Your one-stop shop for all podcasting needs is on the GSMC Podcast Network. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the GSMC Podcast Network so you can get up to date with business, relationships, whatever you may need. All your podcasting needs are a part of the GSMC Podcast Network, but you're here for sports. And I got you. I'm Shaq Scott, like I said before. And welcome, guys. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Last time you heard my voice, folks, I was a little bit in a humble mood because I had just been humbled quite frequently by the NCAA March Madness tournament. And I am proud to say today, that that's not the case. Before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I just want to start this show today right off the bat by saying, I told you so. I told you so. Shout out to the Baylor Bears. Shout out to the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I'm sorry, what a great season. I told y'all, though. I told you the Baylor Bears are going to win it all, and they did. So now, welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, folks. We got a great show lined up for you today. Today, we're going to talk about the Masters Tournament. It's Masters Week. We have to talk about the Masters Tournament. We're then going to get into a little bit of the Megan Rapinoe and Draymond Green beef, where it may have started, what my thoughts are on it. We're then going to talk about the top 25 under 25 list that was released by ESPN recently, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. And then we're going to end the show with our new segment, Give Them Their Flowers. We got another candidate for the Give Them Their Flowers segment. As we get closer to the end of the show, I'll let you know and kind of give you more of a hint who we could be giving them their flowers to this week. But let's start our coverage with the Masters Tournament. It's Masters Week, folks. We're in Augusta, Georgia. We got nice weather. We got fans. We got the food for very reasonable pricing. We got Masters Tournament. We got a coverage on ESPN, and it's going to roll over to CBS this weekend. It's all back, folks. And I know we just had a Masters Tournament last November, but we're right back to the Masters Tournament again this year. And if you did not hear Tuesday's episode, I encourage you to listen to it. Because on Tuesday, I hinted at a list of who some of the top names were to look out for. And I still believe, even though it's fairly early, as we're going to get into the idea of what the leaderboard looks like, I still believe a lot of those names are going to be there at the end. I hinted at the idea and the fact that I'm a huge Bryson DeChambeau fan, and I expect him to be the victor in the end. We talked about Dustin Johnson's most recent Masters victory. We also talked about Jordan Spieth and his return to the winner's board, winning the Valero Texas Open. We talked about all those things on Tuesday's episode, so make sure you give that a listen if you haven't already. But today the tournament's already started. It's kicked off. We've already teed off. It's kicked off. And a lot of viral moments have already happened. If you haven't been paying attention, I'm here to let you know what you missed thus far. You need to get going. You need to get on it. Get on it. Stop slacking off, folks. I'm telling you right now, your boys got you covered. You know I'm going to talk about it, but you need to do your due diligence and check it out. Check out the Masters Tournament. There is a video floating around on social media right now. I highly encourage anyone who hasn't seen this video already to go on any social media platform, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, and type in Bryson DeChambeau and VJ Singh. Bryson DeChambeau and VJ Singh. Now you may be saying, what do those two have in common? The video that's on social media is of Bryson DeChambeau practicing his drive. He's at the Masters, at the driving range, practicing his drive, and he is literally teeing off like an insane person. I'm talking about back to back to back, like baseball type swing for his drives, and he's practicing. He's practicing, and VJ Singh's in the background looking in amazement, judgmentally, if that's even a word. He just looks shocked overall. Let's just go with that. He just looks shocked overall, and it's just a very funny video, and it just all, in my opinion, epitomizes who Bryson DeChambeau is. I talked about on last episode how he is a unit physically, but mentally he approaches the game maybe like we've never seen before. He analyzes it so much and uses science and uses math before he makes decisions. So I'm looking at this video, and yes, it is funny, but I'm also realizing he's getting his body used to what is expected of him for the Masters tournament and practicing his power and what may work and what may not work while he's doing his driving. He's getting all that out early. And everybody else that walked up to the driving range, they were taking pretty good drives, but they weren't teeing off the way he was, like literally back to back to back. And part of that, I do believe, is an intimidation factor. I know for a fact Bryson is looking at his competition and saying, I could get into their heads, kind of like Tiger Woods used to do, before we even start. If they look at me and they're like, what the heck is this guy doing? What is he doing? And they're seeing the power that I'm hitting with, I'm in their heads before we even get started. And that means a lot in golf, because golf is very mental. So if you haven't seen that video, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's very, very funny. If you follow the GSMC Sports Podcast on our Twitter, I'll be sure to retweet the video and link it so you guys can see. Very, very funny video. But let's hop into this leaderboard. As of the time of this recording, all the top names that I mentioned on last week's episode, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Bryson DeChambeau, all those big names I mentioned. All of them, right? None of them are at the top of the leaderboard. Not a single person is at the top of the leaderboard right now. Not a single person at the top of the leaderboard. But that's okay, because that's golf. It's golf in a nutshell. It is exactly what you expect out of this tournament. The Masters tournament is a very challenging course, which is why it was that much more impressive when we saw Tiger Woods have his run there. But at the top of the leaderboard right now is Justin Rose. Justin Rose out of the UK, who in 2019 didn't even make the cut for the Masters. The 2019 Masters that Tiger Woods won, he didn't even make the cut. So it's very enlightening and intriguing to see him at the top of the leaderboard right now, but it's still very early. Very, very early. But he's playing pretty well after round one. So it's just interesting to me that we got the Masters back, and I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit more and reiterate the fact of who I truly believe is going to take this Masters tournament. And I encourage you, if you're a casual fan out there, if you followed my words and my advice from last week to watch this Masters tournament, that you don't fall in love with the leaderboard, because if there ever is a tournament in golf that is ever changing, it's this one right here, folks. It is this tournament. It is a very tough course, and the reason why I keep saying that is because it is a very difficult course to play. And all it takes is one bad round. Now, you may be a Tiger Woods in his prime where you have such good rounds that you can afford to have a bad round every now and then. But the majority of these golfers aren't like that. So when we're watching these players have bad rounds, that's it. We're seeing people who are on the top of the leaderboards get knocked down in the blink of an eye. And as of recently, Yahoo Sports released an article about Bryson DeChambeau, and I just wanted to use it to further hit home the point that I was telling you guys, that I truly believe Bryson DeChambeau to be a threat to this tournament. And this article is by Yahoo Sports and the writer Jay Busby, and it goes as follows. At this point in Masters Week back in 2020, Bryson DeChambeau had cranked the hype meter deep into the red with bold pronouncements about how he was going to carve the course apart, driving onto other fairways to set up his short second shots. It didn't quite work out that way. DeChambeau couldn't break out big dogs the way he wanted to, and he finished 18 strokes off of Dustin Johnson's winning score. But now the Masters has come around again, and DeChambeau already has fellow players and a few patrons in attendance astonished. And in the article, they link to the video of Bryson DeChambeau and Vijay Singh teeing off on the driving range that I referenced earlier. Tuesday morning at Augusta National, DeChambeau made no secret of how much he wants to claim this tournament, speaking in sentences as winding and multi-syllabic as his drives are long. DeChambeau bracketed topic after topic from his own health to the state of Georgia's election laws, but the focus always came back to claiming a green jacket. This has been on my radar since I was a kid, DeChambeau said. Now that I've accomplished winning the U.S. Open, this is the next goal for me. He also tried to break down how he came up short in 2020 at Augusta. Given what I learned from the Masters last November, I'm going to be focused mainly on accomplishing how do I hit iron shots into greens to give myself the best chance to give myself the best chance and the ability to make birdie. There are a lot of times last year where I hit decent enough drives, but I just didn't feel like I was hitting shots in the correct quadrants of the greens or giving myself opportunities on par fives like I should have. DeChambeau's stats for the 2021 season are as impressive as ever. He ranks first in total shots gained off the tee, shots gained tee to green, driving distance, eagles, and scoring average. If there's a flaw in his game, it's his driving accuracy. He ranks only 133rd on tour, but every other facet of the game appears to be on track. As a result, he's one of the favorites in this tournament, behind only Dustin Johnson. Now, I'm going to stop the article there. And I want to stop it there because there's a key point in the article, and if you missed it, I'll reiterate the fact. So, there's a direct quote from Bryson DeChambeau in this article, and he talks about the idea of how he approaches the game. He kind of hints at it, and you got to be paying attention to really notice what he was talking about there. And I'm going to bring it up here. So, the part of the article where he talks about his focus. So he says, I'm going to be focusing mainly on accomplishing, do I hit iron shots into greens to give myself the best chance to get an ability to make birdie? And where I hit decent enough drives, but I just didn't feel like I was hitting shots in the correct quadrants of the greens or giving myself opportunities on par fives like I should have. In this line, correct quadrants on the greens or giving myself opportunities on par fives like I should have. Now, the reason why I'm highlighting that part is because that's a man who's aware of his game, who's aware of his flaws, and who's not afraid to try things. And the article the author of the article at the very beginning hinted at the fact that this is a guy who's willing to take crazy shots. No risk it for the biscuit. He's the Bruce Arians of golf. No risk it for the biscuit. The Bruce Arians of golf. He's taking these crazy risks. And this is a person that I am all in on. I'm all in on. And this article further reiterates the fact that of you understanding the thought process that this man is going through when he's on the golf course. And how could you not see him as a favorite? It's just a matter of him figuring it out. Just a matter of him figuring it out. And then if you see the video that I referenced before, you notice that there's a mind game coming into play as well. So the other players are scared. The hype is building on them. The players are scared. In my personal opinion, the Masters tournament is his for the taking. Now, Dustin Johnson is very impressive, especially the way he won the last Masters tournament. But I think that works in Bryson DeChambeau's favor. 18 shots off of the lead in the last tournament. That's a lot of homework he had to do. A lot of time he had to spend figuring out, okay, how can I put myself atop the leaderboard? And I think he's going to do it. That's a name I want you to be on the lookout for. Definitely be on the lookout for. Before we end off our coverage of the Masters, I also want to I talked a little bit about Tiger Woods, and we would be remiss if we didn't even mention the fact of Tiger. And Yahoo also released another article because Tiger Woods on Twitter tweeted out his congratulations and his well wishes for all of the players this past weekend. And it just warmed my heart to see. It was a little bit of bittersweet because I did feel sad, but Tiger tweeted out, I'll miss running up Dustin Johnson PGA's bill at the Champions Dinner tonight. It's still one of my favorite nights of the year. And it's just a short tweet, taking a little slight dig at Dustin Johnson, very lighthearted. And it just warmed my heart to see that. It just warmed my heart to see that because Tiger is just referencing the whole entire event. It's not just the players go out and they play golf. It's a whole event, both on and off the course for them. The Masters dinner of the previous champions the night before, they all sit down, they talk, they relive the glory days, they talk about the good, the bad, all that's going on. And Tiger, as a previous winner, would be a part of this dinner normally, under normal circumstances, if not for the most recent tragic accident that he experienced. So it's a little bit bittersweet for us to have a Masters tournament knowing that Tiger's not there. And a lot of players have made mention of the fact that it feels odd with Tiger not being there. And some of them have even paid tribute to him. Fred Couples, his group in particular, his caddies had masks that had Tiger on it, which is really cool to see. They tweeted out, "Thinking of my guy Tiger Woods during this week. The Masters, I'll miss you tonight at dinner. It's not the same without you." And the players just overall have just sent their well wishes back to Tiger, the same as he's sending his well wishes to them. And it's just great to see the golf world come together. Just come together for Tiger Woods in the time of need, because this is a very, very rough time for him. And if we know anything about Tiger Woods, we know that he's extremely competitive. And whenever the sport of golf has been taken away from him, he's had a hard time coping with that. A very hard time coping with that. So our thoughts and our prayers go out to him during his time. But I hope he can enjoy the tournament just as much as we can, because it's going to be a great one nonetheless. And there's one more thing I want to discuss here about the Masters tournament. And this one kind of overlaps into the basketball world. So the Augusta National this year decided that they were going to do the honor of honoring Lee Elder. Lee Elder. And you may be wondering who Lee Elder is. Well, Lee Elder is the first black male to break the color barrier in the Augusta National, in the Masters. And we have an article here from Yahoo Sports again, and this is from Jay Busby again, and it goes as follows. The first time Lee Elder entered the grounds of Augusta National, he and a friend drove up Magnolia Lane. They toured the famed clubhouse, strolled around the majestic oak, looked out at the tee where in just a few days' time, Elder would start his first Masters. Then they went into the nearby grill room for lunch. As they dined, the maitre d' approached their table. "I just wanted you two to know you two are the first black men to ever eat in the clubhouse besides the help." This was in 1975. 46 years later, almost to the day, Elder was back at Augusta National, just a few steps from that same dining room, joining Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player to ceremonially start the 2021 Masters. The patrons surrounding the first tee welcomed Elder, the first black man to play the Masters, with the most sustained applause of the morning. It felt like a release, an acknowledgement of all Elder had to suffer to get to the 1975 tournament, a long overdue congratulation and apology. Just outside the ropes, Arthur Johnson, Elder's friend from that day long ago, took in the whole scene, a diverse gathering of friends and family cheering Elder in one of the classic bastions of old money South. "The changes to this place," Johnson said, "have been tremendous. 46 years ago, Elder looked out on that first tee and he was terrified. He'd been carried with Gene Littler, who offered a bit of advice just before the two walked out together. Lee, I know this is going to be a hard day for you, but I just want you to know, if I get in your way, just shout at me because I have a tendency to do those things." Humor broke the tension and Elder relaxed a bit. "What I remember so much about my first visit here was the fact that every tee and every green that I walked on, I got tremendous ovations. I think when you receive something like that, it helps us settle down, because I'll tell you, I was nervous as we began to play, that it took me a few holes to kind of calm down." Johnson, sporting a forest green 1975 cap in honor of that year, remembered things a little differently. He was in the gallery and thus had a far different perspective than Elder out on the course. "The tension in the air was high," he said. "The people weren't as friendly as they were today. They weren't saying anything out loud, but there was a lot of muttering under their breath." Elder had spent the first part of the week trying to navigate a stream of media requests so constant that he eventually had to beg then club chairman Clifford Roberts to curtail them. He couldn't practice. He couldn't get to know the course. He had no time. Even though Elder had played well enough to warrant an invitation to the Masters, outside of the gates of the Augusta National, he was still suffering because of the color of his skin. Local Augusta restaurateur David Rachels told another story from that week. Lee and his party went into a restaurant called the Green Jacket. It was early in the evening. There was nobody there, and they looked at Lee and said, "We can't serve you here." So the entire party had to leave, even though there were tables open everywhere. But the restaurant closed and went out of business, and here's Lee getting honored at the Masters. So sometimes things work out. Now, I'm going to stop the article there because I just want to break down a couple of things here. As great as it is for us to have this Masters tournament, we must always keep things in perspective. In 1975, Lee Elder was the first black man to ever play at the Masters. That's not that long ago, folks. That's not that long ago. And it's a stark reminder of us that we've come a long way, but we still got a long way to go. We got a long way to go. Yes, this is a sports podcast, but sometimes sports and real life overlap. And this is one of those instances. As we have the backdrop of the MLB moving the All-Star game out of Georgia for voting laws, we've had North Carolina and the NBA move their All-Star game because of laws that were passed. And we have the backdrop of Augusta National getting some pressure from some outside sources saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't play the Masters in Augusta this year. Or players are being asked about it. It's a stark reminder that it still is a lot for us to overcome. The racial barrier and the racial tension that they're describing here is something that many still see to this day. And sports is no different from that. Me being a black male who enjoys golf, I enjoy it a lot. I will be sitting here lying to you if I tell you that I do not go to golf courses and driving ranges and I don't get looks. I still get the same looks that Lee Elder described in this article that he saw in 1975. I still get the same looks. Still get the people questioning. People stopping what they're doing to watch me golf. Stopping what they're doing to watch me golf. Moving their bag over to prevent me from golfing right next to them. These are things that's happened to this day. These are still things that happen to this day. Now, every man's journey is different, and I'm not saying my experience is exactly the same as Lee Elder or as extreme some of the things he's endured, but those racial tension and racist moments still happen, folks. So we got a long way to go. So I want to bring this article up for us to enjoy the Masters tournament, but you have to have the proper perspective. If there's one thing you always hear me say, is I'm always telling you guys, keep proper perspective on things. We can enjoy this Masters tournament, but still acknowledge the fact that this is horrible that Lee Elder had to go through this. And there's some of you who don't look like Lee Elder and will never have to go through anything like that, so can't imagine it. So when we have these instances and reminders of things like that, and shout out to the Masters for honoring Lee Elder, if in my personal opinion is well past due, but they're honoring him nonetheless. Shout out to him. Shout out to the Masters and Lee Elder for him being honored. But we got to keep things in perspective, folks. Keep things in perspective. Be an ally. Do your research. I highly encourage you to do it. In all instances, not just golf, in all instances. So shout out to Lee Elder. Shout out to the Masters. And also shout out to Steph Curry, who also took to Twitter to shout out Lee Elder himself. And we all know, if you don't know, Steph Curry is a huge fan of golf himself. On Twitter, he put, special day. In 1975, Lee Elder broke the color barrier at the Masters. This morning, he joins as an honorary starter. As Lee says, you got to stay the course, and we all got to stay the course to continue what Lee started with expanding access to the sport. Congrats to this legend. So as you see, it's crossing color bounds, color barriers, and sports. So pay attention, folks. Enjoy the Masters, but have your perspective. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here, a pause for the cause. On the other half of this break, we're going to talk about Megan Rapinoe versus Draymond Green. Later on in the show, we'll talk about the top 25 under 25 list from ESPN. And then we're going to end the show with our new favorite segment, Give Them Their Flowers. But all that can't be done until after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Shaq Scott. We've had a great show thus far. We have already talked about the Masters Tournament, the PGA Tournament. We talked about who to look out for, the Masters Tournament honoring Lee Elder. And now we're going to get into Megan Rapinoe and Draymond Green. You may be asking yourself, Megan Rapinoe and Draymond Green, what do they have in common? Well, don't worry, folks. I got you. I'll tell you what they have in common. And what I have here in front of me is an ESPN article from Jeff Carlisle, the U.S. soccer correspondent for ESPN. And I'm going to read this article because there's a lot that it covers, and I'm going to break it down for you. So if you don't understand, don't feel bad. I'm going to break it down for you. We're going to talk about it because there's a lot of interesting things that come out of this article, and it'll further explain what Megan Rapinoe and Draymond Green have in common. All right. Article goes as follows. United States women's national team star Megan Rapinoe hit back at a series of tweets by Golden State Warriors forward Draymond Green, in which he in part blamed women for making complaints rather than taking action over disparities in pay and investment in women's sports. On a Zoom call ahead of this summer's Olympics in Tokyo, Rapinoe told reporters that a series of tweets made by Draymond Green last month on which he tagged a number of WNBA stars were misguided. It's really unfortunate in the position Green's in, having all of the resources that he has and the ability to have a much more educated opinion that he just hasn't, said Rapinoe, who has been at the forefront of the United States women's national team quest for equal pay, and then drag all of these other people into it by tagging them and speaking at a time when the NCAA tournament is going on and all that we saw with the lack of resources and funding. That's frustrating. That's the take you have. You obviously showed your whole blankety blank and not even understanding what we all talk about all the time. WNBA players and us on the national team. Like what Sue Bird said, you tagged the wrong people. You don't think we asked for more money? I mean, what are we screaming about? Nonstop. We are getting obnoxious. We are getting obnoxious to ourselves, to be honest. And then 2 or 3 days later, to completely double down on it is really frustrating. We know all of this. We know all this about all social movements and all people who are marginalized. Whether it's by race or gender, religion, sexuality, whatever it is, it's not just their job to be the ones fighting oppression. We need all the other people as well. So to have someone who does know what it's like to be oppressed in many ways, to heap that on the back of all female players or people who play female sports, it is just really disappointing. Rapinoe added that she hasn't spoken of equal pay, but also about the level of investment and media coverage. When we all talk about equality in women's sports, we always talk about first investment and funding and resources and marketing and branding and investing, not just the players, but the support staff and coaching and media, TV media, print media, all of it. Those are the things we talk about first. And I think anybody who watches us or follows us or really has skin in the game and equal pay or equality in that sense knows that that's what we talked about first. In a series of tweets posted on March 27th, Green said, as long as y'all make the argument about pay while the revenue stays the same, they will continue to point at the revenue not being high enough to cover bigger salaries. While that is true in dang near every business, how do we take the card out of their pockets? That's the key to changing the pay. There's an argument for lack of revenue unless you make those that say they stand for women actually stand up. Green added, the NBA wasn't always the global game that it is today. It wasn't always driving as much revenue as it is today, but there were people behind it, building the platform, and more importantly, telling individual stories and building up interest in the players. That's how the game took off. Who's building up y'all's platform? Who's telling the individual stories of how great y'all are? Building the interest and transforming women's basketball into a global game. Green tagged WNBA stars Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Candace Parker, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Brittany Griner, and others. Rapinoe was also asked about the reaction to the recent passage of a new election law in Georgia and MLB's decision to relocate the All-Star game from Atlanta. Rapinoe gave MLB's decision her full support. I think everybody has a responsibility to do whatever it is that they can to make the world a better place. We're talking about specifically about these Jim Crow 2.0 voter suppression laws in Georgia. Yeah, I think these companies have influence in Georgia, whether it's MLB or local companies, wherever. Maybe if you can flex your power in that way and use your influence of a platform that you have, where you have, obviously, black and brown players in your league, you have black and brown fans. You know, just generally the issue that we have with voter suppression in this country, I think everybody in every business and everything should be at the disposal to make sure that we're influencing those laws in the right way. She added, ultimately, it's all about people's rights. Showing up, allowing people to exercise their right to vote and to be a part of the civic process is the most important thing in a democracy. So this is extremely undemocratic and un-American by the ideals that we want to live by. So yeah, shout out to the MLB for making that step. I'm sure that was very difficult, and financially, I'm sure it has a lot of implications, and politically for them, I'm sure it does as well. But it draws a very clear line in the sand for a league who has more to do than they have less to do. So it's a really strong step from them. All right, it's a lot to unpack there. And shout out to ESPN.com. And let me give credit to the author. This is written by Jeff Carlisle, the ESPN correspondent. But there's a lot to unpack there. So if you miss what I talked about or zoned out, I got you covered. To put it in layman's terms, Draymond Green stepped in it, folks. He truly stepped in it. So at the end of March last month, Draymond Green wrote a series of tweets basically talking about the women's sports in general and the pay in the pay equality issues and the women quote unquote complaints about it and how they're taking the wrong approach, which is very ironic to tell them how they're taking the wrong approach. He then further did an interview after one of the Golden State Warriors practices and reiterated the fact, saying, I'm really tired of seeing them complain about the lack of pay because they're doing themselves a disservice by just complaining. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Draymond? Like, are you tone deaf there? Are you not realizing the issue with there? He also went on to say they're not laying out steps that they can take to change that. It's coming off as a complaint because the people that can change it are just going to continue to say, well, the revenue isn't there. So if you don't bring in the revenue, we can't up your pay. They're going to keep using that, but the reality is, as true as that is, it's an excuse because everyone says we support women. We support women's empowerment. We support women in the workplace. We do this for women. We do this for women, blah, blah, blah. And everyone uses it to their advantage. Yet, these women are not using these people who are saying these very things to their advantage. And there's an issue there. All right. One, Draymond Green is speaking for women. That's your first issue there, Draymond. You do not get to speak for women. Let women speak for women. That's your first mistake, my friend. Do not speak for women. Do not. If you want to help women, be an ally. Be an ally. Do not speak for women. Do not tell women what they've been doing. You can't do that. That's not fair. Do not tell women what they've been doing because clearly, based off of these tweets and his verbiage and his interview afterward, Draymond Green has no idea what women have been doing for women's sports. Clearly not. The definition of an ally is a state formally cooperating with another for a military or other purpose, or to combine or unite a resource or commodity with another for a mutual benefit. So, if you want to help out Draymond, be an ally. Combine or unite a resource or commodity with another for a mutual benefit. He spoke of resources. If you want to help women, use the resources you have, Draymond. You got a platform. You got the eyes of all of America on you. Speak out for these women. Speak out for them, but don't speak on behalf of them. There's a big difference there. So you can say, if someone's sitting there and they're asking me about my opinions about Kyrie Irving being out, if I don't want to talk about that, I can say, oh, you know what? Kyrie Irving is out for personal reasons, but did any of you guys catch the Las Vegas Aces last night? Did you catch that game? Did you see Liz Cambridge last night? Did you see Kelsey Plum? Diana Taurasi? Speak out for them. Speak out for them. Bring attention to them. You can use the resources you have. Draymond Green is not uneducated, but this whole entire transaction was very stupid. Very stupid. So Megan Rapinoe has every right to be as upset as she is. And all of the women who took offense to this have every right to as well. Because you as a man and me as a man cannot speak for women. We can't speak on behalf of these women. Especially when you're not educated on the topic. He went on to say that they aren't speaking to these same people and using the resources that they have. That's not true. It's flat out not true. It's flat out not true. The one thing I can say about women's sports that I can't say about the men is about the empowerment. They support each other. They uplift each other. So I know for a fact, just knowing how empowering and uplifting they are of each other, that they're using their platforms and their resources to try to further the sport. And it's working thus far. But the problem is they're having to do it all on their own. They're doing it all on their own. And it's not just the WNBA. It's worldwide. It's worldwide. We saw it with the women's basketball, the NCAA women's tournament this year. We got all eyes on the tournament. We got great games we witnessed during the tournament. But we saw what the NCAA thought of women by the weight room situation they gave them. We saw what they thought of them. And that continues to happen because of enablers like a Draymond Green and like other men who refuse to be allies. So don't speak so matter-of-factly when you have no idea what you're talking about, Draymond. Instead, these tweets should have been questions. They should have been questions. They should have been at Megan Rapinoe, at Diana Taurasi, at Candace Parker. How can I, as a black male in the NBA with this platform that I have, be of assistance to you women, not just in the WNBA, but women athletes as a whole? How can I help? The first step to helping somebody is figuring out how you can help them. You can't just assume like, oh, I know who I am and what I do and what worked for the NBA, it'll work for the WNBA. I hate when people make that comparison because it's not fair. It's not fair. Yes, the NBA didn't always have the revenue it had. Yes, it grew. But you cannot compare that to the WNBA. It is not the same exact thing because we know for a fact women and men are treated differently in America. Not in just sports, in America as a whole. So to sit here and say that the WNBA is not getting the growth that it deserves because not enough people are focused on how to build the revenue there, that's not true. There are plenty of people who are focused on how to build a revenue. Plenty. Trust me. Trust me, there are. I know that for a fact. The WNBA is not some fly-by-wall event. The problem is that for so long, it's been the literal little sister of the NBA. It's been a throw-in. So when TV rights deals have been made, they've thrown in the WNBA. When you've got partnerships being activated between Adidas, Under Armour, Nike, they're throwing in the WNBA. And I get from the outside why that may have thought to be a resource and to help because it's either that or them struggle to find funding overall for discriminatory purposes. But all it did was just further stunt the growth of it. Because now, when we're in this women empowerment movement, and we're seeing the likes of the Diana Taurasi's, the Megan Rapinoes, we're seeing them stand up and say, hey, enough is enough. We are just as good and as valuable as the NBA. And you know what I say to that? You're absolutely right. They are absolutely right. 100%. 100% spot on. So Draymond Green, you should have been asking questions. Asking these women. Asking, if not these women, the women around you, the women you may know. You're an athlete. The athlete community is a very tight-knit one. Reach out. Ask questions. How can I be an ally? How can I be an ally to you? How can I use my resources or maybe your resources, maybe we combine resources to further this sport, to further women athletes everywhere, to get rid of the pay gap, the pay inequalities, the racial inequalities, the gender inequalities, to get rid of all of that? How can I be an ally? And what Megan Rapinoe said was a very valid point. Him as a black male knows what it's like to be discriminated against, knows what it's like for people to assume that they have the answers for you. And I can tell you guys, folks, me, Shaq Scott, as a black male, it is the most frustrating thing for someone to tell me how I can better myself, especially when they don't look like me, because you do not know the struggle that I go through. You do not know my daily life. You do not know the iniquities, the inequalities, the injustices that I suffer. So much so that I become numb to it. You don't know what I go through. So to have someone tell you, all you need to do is this, Shaq, and your life will be better. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Look for your resources. What if someone would have told that to Draymond Green? What if someone would have told that to Draymond Green? Huh? What if? He would lose his mind, and rightfully so. It's not right, so do not do this to these women. Especially in 2021. We watched one of the best NCAA tournaments in history. Men or women's, with the women's tournament. And I keep saying the women's tournament outshined the men's tournament. And that's no disrespect to the men's tournament this year, but the women's tournament was amazing. So these stereotypical ideological, you got me stuttering here. Ideology is what I was trying to say. Ideas. We got to let those go, folks. We got to. And I encourage all my other fellow men out there who are feeling nervous or awkward about it, do your research. Do your own research. Don't put it all on the backs of women to get themselves out. Don't say, hey, you don't got the proper resources, look for them. Hey, you don't have funding, find it. If it was that easy, it would have been done by now. Don't you think so? It's a dumb thing to say. The same people you guys are wanting to break down the revenue gap, you're criticizing. Because they aren't helping. They're enabling the iniquities. You got to call these people out. But sometimes it's more poignant when it comes from someone that's of the same sex. So if another man tells a man like, hey, you got the money and resources, why don't you invest in the WNBA? It sounds a lot different than it coming from a woman. So we need you, Draymond Green. We need you, Shaq Scott. I'm calling on myself. We need you, all the other men of the world out there. Be allies for these women. Be allies for them. All sports are beautiful. We all love sports. Women's sports is included in that. Women's soccer, women's basketball, women's tennis. Probably the greatest athlete of all time is a woman in Serena Williams. And doesn't get the respect she deserves because of things like this. Because of people who think like Draymond Green was. So I encourage you, Draymond, do your research, do your homework. This is a learning moment. A lot of times, me speaking for myself as a man, I struggle with ego. You got to let that go. Let it go in this moment. You put your foot in your mouth. Now learn from it. Learn from it. Because I know for a fact, his mom was side-eyeing him. Or the women around him were side-eyeing him for saying such a thing. Do not assume. Do not assume you know everything, because you will be humbled pretty quickly. And shout out to Megan Rapinoe and all the other women who weren't afraid to humble Draymond Green. He needed it. He needed it. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here, Draymond? I'm asking you. I'm asking the fans out there. I'm asking the men. And I'm asking the women. Where do we go from here? I pose this question to you guys. What do you propose we do? I give you suggestions. What do you think we should do? Engage with me on Twitter. Engage with me on Instagram. In the comments, let us know. What do you do? What I can suggest is for us to be allies. And if you aren't at the point in your life where you feel you can be an ally, educate yourself then, friend. Educate yourself. Do your research. See the true value in these women's sports. And not just the WNBA. Look at the value. Here in America, the national team, bar none, the best national team we have is our women's national team. But they're getting paid less than the men? Why is that? Ask yourself, why is that? Is it because of old traditionalist views from back in the day? I can answer that for you right now. Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. So we need to stop all this old way of thinking and become allies. Help out your sister. Help out your brother. Sports is supposed to be the place we come and we unite. I challenge you all on that. So if you don't hear anything else from me, hear this. Be an ally. Educate yourself. Don't be like Draymond Green was. And guess what, Draymond? It was a mistake. But it's not permanent. It's up to you now to drop that ego and to realize, oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I spoke out of turn. I was ignorant to the fact, but I can educate myself. And then when you educate yourself, be an ally, use your resources, come together, and we get what we all need. This is the only way. But until then, shut up. Shut up. I'm sorry. Be quiet. Do your research, and if you don't know what you're talking about, do your research. All right, folks, as we wrap up this second segment of the podcast, before we get into our break, I'm just let you guys know what you can expect on the other half of this break. We got the top 25 on the 25 list from ESPN.com, and we got to end our show with giving them their flowers. We got to give some folks their flowers. I'm so excited about that. But we got a quick pause for the cause. See you on the other half of this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Shaq Scott, and we've had a great show thus far, folks. Thus far, we talked about the Masters Tournament. We started off the show talking about the latest and all to do with the Masters Tournament. We then went on to talk about Megan Rapinoe and Draymond Green, and why Draymond Green should probably shut up for a little while and how he can help himself in the future. And now, we got to talk about this top 25 under 25. And you may be wondering, what is the top 25 under 25? So, if you've been under a rock lately, ESPN's insiders released this list of the top NBA's best 25 under 25, ranking young stars by future potential. Now, before we get into this list, ESPN, I have to give them all the credit in the world because they are great about this. They know anytime they release a list like this, it's going to spark a huge controversy in the sports world as a whole. We're all going to talk about it. It's going to be on the morning shows. It's going to be on a podcast like mine. People are going to talk about it. We're going to debate it because how can you not? How can you not? And so I'm falling guilty to it. I'm falling guilty to it right now. I saw the list come out and I had some head scratching moments. Some I agreed with, but I said I have to come in here and talk about this with you guys because I know you care about it. So if you missed it, we're going to break down the whole entire list. I'm going to go through the top 25 list. We're going to talk about who I agree with. I'll give you my thoughts on how the careers will turn out, who will make the biggest leap from the list, and then we'll talk about a particular name and why he's so overhyped and why this hype is either worthy or not worthy. So, the article starts with which young NBA stars are taking over and which teams have the best collections of young talent in the league. Bobby Marks, Kevin Pelton, and Mike Schmitz ranked their top 25 players under 25 based on future potential, including LaMelo Ball, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, and Trae Young. Note, each writer's individual rankings are listed at the bottom of this story. We won't get to each writer's individual rankings. We're just going to get through the list as a whole because they compiled them all together. So, I'm just going to go through the list in total first. I'm going to go through all 25, not make any comments about it. We'll just go through the 25. Then after I go through the 25, we'll then get into my opinions on the list. So, at number 1, Luka Doncic, Dallas Mavericks. Number 2, Zion Williamson. Number 3, LaMelo Ball. Number 4, Donovan Mitchell. Number 5, Jason Tatum. Number 6, De'Aaron Fox. Number 7, Ben Simmons. Number 8, Devin Booker. Number 9, Bam Adebayo. Number 10, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 11, Brandon Ingram. Number 12, Jaylen Brown. Number 13, Jamal Murray. Number 14, Michael Porter Jr. Number 15, Ja Morant. Number 16, Trae Young. Number 17, Mikal Bridges. Number 18, Domantas Sabonis. Number 19, Anthony Edwards. Number 20, DeAndre Ayton. Number 21, Tyrese Halliburton. Number 22, John Collins. Number 23, Jared Allen. Number 24, Lonzo Ball. And number 25, Colin Sexton. So, to review, let me go through the top 10 one more time with you guys. Number 1, Luka Doncic. Number 2, Zion Williamson. Number 3, LaMelo Ball. Number 4, Donovan Mitchell. Number 5, Jason Tatum. Number 6, De'Aaron Fox. Number 7, Ben Simmons. Number 8, Devin Booker. Number 9, Bam Adebayo. And number 10, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Those are the top 10 out of the top 25 under 25. Now, it's a lot of names I just mentioned there. And there is some peculiar order to those names. So, based off of this list, these writers agree, the ESPN basketball insiders, all agree that Luka Doncic is the number 1 top 25 under 25 players. Now, out of all these players here, Luka Doncic averages 22 points a game in comparison to Zion Williamson, who's 20.7, and LaMelo Ball, who's 19.6. So, we got Luka Doncic as the number 1 overall, top 25 under 25. And just from the beginning, before I get into details, I can't say I'm too mad at this selection. And their reasoning is the 22-year-old has been selected to start in 2 All-Star games and will get named to an All-NBA team for a second consecutive season. Those All-NBA honors will make him eligible to sign a 5-year, $200 million extension in the offseason. So, this is just to further reiterate the fact of Luka Doncic is an all-star and borderline superstar. He's a baller, and I agree with that. He got a lot of hype coming into the NBA, and there was a little bit of a debate as to whether who should be selected, Luka Doncic or Trae Young. That was a hot topic at the time. And thus far, Luka has lived up to the potential. So I'm not mad at him being number 1. Going to number 2, Zion Williamson. There's absolutely no debate for me there. This kid, we have not seen, talking about hype. Hype for Zion was, the only comparison we have to that was LeBron James. LeBron having, in my personal opinion, more hype. But the only comparison to the Zion hype before he got to the NBA was LeBron James. In college, every game was a must-watch. The kid's foot went through his shoe. He broke his shoe on the court, and we talked about it for 4 days straight. His highlight films from high school have over millions and millions, borderline billions of views. The hype for him is unmatched apart from LeBron James. So I'm not mad at him being a number 2. And thus far, he's lived up to that hype. Now, my problem comes with this number 3. LaMelo Ball, Charlotte Hornets. And I'm going to review their reasoning as to why he's number 3. So, prior to breaking his wrist, Ball was posting historic numbers for a 19-year-old, and the ease with which he was dissecting NBA defenses stood out even more than the production. Given his positional size, supernatural vision, elite instincts, creativity, touch, and unwavering confidence, Ball has as much long-term upside as anyone in the NBA not named Zion or Luka. What makes him special can't be taught, and the late bloomer will likely become even more of a problem for defenses as he matures physically. Now, that's not a bad explanation. However, that's still way too high for LaMelo Ball to me, in my personal opinion. Way too high. Let's look at some of the names behind LaMelo Ball. Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, Bam Adebayo, Jamal Murray, Ja Morant, Trae Young. These are names that are behind LaMelo Ball. Right now. And if I'm being quite honest, LaMelo Ball, in my personal opinion, is not even in the top 5 or the top 25 under 25. I will have him right on the outskirts. So I will have him probably within that 6 to 8 range. But he's not number 5. That's way too high. And shout out to LaMelo. Speaking of hype, he has all the hype in the world on him. But he's not a top 3 player of the top 25 under 25. No disrespect to LaMelo, who's an all-around hooper, and before this wrist injury was, like the article mentioned, on a historic course. But I don't see him being number 3, especially over a Devin Booker. Don't forget, this man dropped over 70 points in a basketball game. Under 25. Over 70 points in a basketball game. We hadn't seen anything like that since Kobe Bryant. But he's behind LaMelo Ball. We watched Bam Adebayo last year carry the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals. And shout out to Jimmy Butler. Shout out to Tyler Hero. Shout out to Duncan Robinson. Shout out to Jay Crowder, who was on the team at the time. But Bam Adebayo was a difference maker for that Miami team. And if not for him being injured towards the end, then we may have witnessed a more closely and tightly contested NBA Finals. So to have Bam Adebayo 5 spots down behind LaMelo Ball, that's absurd. Absurd. Shout out to these writers, but I don't agree with that. I don't agree at all. I don't agree. Donovan Mitchell. And I was saving this name because I'm watching Donovan Mitchell on a nightly basis, folks. And I promise you, if he wasn't playing in Utah, he would be leading the headlines on every major sporting channel every night. Because the things he's doing on the court and consistently has been doing is great. It's great. It deserves the equal amount of hype as LaMelo Ball is getting. But since he's in Utah, he's not getting that. And we've seen this in the past with the Andre Karolinkos, the Gordon Haywards, the Karl Malones. When you're in Utah, it's hard to get that recognition. It's not a big market. But us reading this from NBA insiders who are supposed to be in the know, to have Donovan Mitchell behind LaMelo Ball, that's borderline disrespectful, man. Borderline disrespectful. Donovan Mitchell's averaging 24.5 points a game. The Utah Jazz, not to mention, are the NBA's best team right now. And he's the leading scorer. He's having a career-high year with 40% points. 40% from the three-point field this year. And that was something that people questioned when he got into the NBA coming out of Louisville. Will he be a spot-up shooter? Can he shoot the three? We knew he can create off the dribble. We knew he was super athletic. And we're watching him make those changes to his game. We're watching it. We're witnesses to it. And you got him behind LaMelo Ball? No. No, sirree. I'm sorry. Wrong. Jason Tatum, number 5. Jason Tatum. Now, this is a kid who's been in the league for a little bit now. Since 2017, he got drafted. We watched him. We've watched Jason Tatum. And although the Celtics have been up and down, Jason Tatum hasn't. He's been pretty consistent. We watched the kid body a LeBron James and dunk on LeBron in the playoffs. And that moment let me know, oh, this kid's going to be around. He's the real deal. And the article referenced LaMelo Ball's confidence being unwavering, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. But Jason Tatum is the same way. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. Jason Tatum was training with Kobe Bryant. And not just the skill sets he got from him, I know for a fact he walked away mentally with an edge on the court. And it shows. It shows. And I see, in the end, Jason Tatum's career being a little bit more impressive than LaMelo Ball because we're still all depending on LaMelo Ball maturing physically. That's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. And yes, he's grown in height over the last few years. But he may not fill out. But I can see a Donovan Mitchell right now. I can see a Jason Tatum right now. And those two are the real deal. And I'm not saying this to say LaMelo Ball is not going to be a great player in this league. He will be. I truly believe he will be. But I don't think he's going to be better than a Jason Tatum. I don't think he's going to be better than a Devin Booker. Devin Booker is literally, to me, in my personal opinion, I've been watching this kid since Kentucky, is literally one step off and maybe one phase of his game he hasn't quite fully got yet, which is still under development, is his defensive end. But if he shores himself up defensively, Devin Booker could be the next great. The next great, without a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. And now there's another name on this list. And I'm going to stop picking on LaMelo Ball. But his particular place on the list is just disrespectful to me. So this top 25 under 25 has Trae Young at 16. Trae Young is at 16. And let's go over the names that are ahead of Trae Young. Jaylen Brown is ahead of Trae Young. And I talked about Jason Tatum. And Jason Tatum is a pretty good player. And I talked about the idea of him about to be maybe on the cusp of greatness sometime in the future. But Jaylen Brown has been inconsistent. When he's been on, and he's looked just as good as Jason Tatum. But when he's been off, he's been off. And for that reason, I'm not going to put him ahead of Trae Young. And I'm not putting Trae Young at 16 and having Jason Tatum at 12. There's no way. No way. Now, let me go over the reasoning as to why they may have had Jaylen Brown ahead of Trae Young. And let's see if you agree with this. So, when we look at Jaylen Brown's profile, and they have him as saying, despite a disappointing season so far, which is what I just mentioned, the Celtics have 2 players in the top 15 in Tatum and Brown. Named to his first All-Star game in March, Brown is averaging career highs in minutes, points, field goal percentage, assists, steals, and free throw efficiency. Brown is in the first year of a 4-year, $107 million rookie extension and will earn a $1.3 million bonus for his All-Star selection if he appears in at least 58 games this season. That's great. Oh, that's great. Let's look at the reasoning behind Trae Young being at 16. Young's career will be an interesting case study in the importance of defensive limitations. Because of his small stature, Young will always have a difficult time matching up with the league's best guards or playing with a switch-heavy defense, forcing his coaches to get creative defensively. Those concerns help bump Young behind point guards who haven't been nearly as productive offensively at the same age. He has willingly taken a step back in the Hawks' offense this season with more weapons around him, but remains nearly indispensable to the team's ability to score nearly as any player in the league. Now, the point that they're making about him defensively is a great one. And yes, Trae Young does have a bunch of limitations to defensively, to say the least. But you talk about him defensively, I raise you James Harden. James Harden. We talk about James Harden's defense all the time. But you cannot tell me James Harden is not going to go down as a great in the NBA. So if we say that about James Harden, we got to say the same thing about Trae Young. And I'm looking at LaMelo Ball, and he's not a great defender thus far yet either. So if we are basing this off of defense, Trae Young should not be that far down on the list. His offensive ceiling is arguably just as high as anybody on this list ahead of him. This man can create his shot with the best of them. And is literally about to force the NBA's hand to extend the three-point line because of his ability to shoot from so far back with ease. With ease. So Trae Young should not be number 16 on his list. Y'all look crazy. Number 16. Now, let's go through the rest of this list, and I have another name here that is kind of wasn't mentioned in the overall list that I think should have gotten a shout out here. And that name is RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, folks. And now I know a lot of people have issues with RJ Barrett and trusting him. But I still think the kid's pretty good. And if there ever was a year that you should be paying attention to RJ Barrett, this is the year. RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Elfrid Payton, amongst others, have the Knicks relevant. If you were to ask me, post Carmelo Anthony, will the Knicks ever be relevant without a quote-unquote superstar? I would say absolutely not. They need a big name to go with them. But they don't have that quote-unquote big name. RJ Barrett has been reliable this year, but it's still a work in progress. But yet, he's got the Knicks relevant. And for that reason alone, he got to be on this list over Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton, shout out to him. He's at number 25. Will be a good player in this league, but I don't think he's going to have a better career than RJ Barrett. I believe RJ Barrett's ceiling to be tremendously higher than Colin Sexton. So that's a big name that I think that's missing from this list. A big name. A big name. So I mentioned before we got into this list that I would go over who would make the biggest leap. And there's one name in particular that, based off of this list, if we're going off of their numbers, who I believe to make the biggest jump. And I truly believe, going through this list, a person that's going from, and by jump I mean going from the bottom, we'll say the bottom 20 to the top, who can I see making that jump? So off this list here, we got Lonzo Ball at number 24. Colin Sexton at 25. Jared Allen at 23. John Collins at 22. DeAndre Ayton is here. And Anthony Edwards. Based off of this list, one name clearly stands out for me. Anthony Edwards. I don't know if you as a casual fan or you as a diehard fan or you just as a fan in general have been watching any of the Minnesota Timberwolves game lately. And if you haven't, I highly encourage you to do so. This man, Anthony Edwards, is a human highlight reel walking. He's been posterizing people, probably has two of the nastiest dunks I've seen all year long. And he's managed to make himself relevant amidst a really good player in Karl Anthony Towns. And in a year where D'Angelo Russell has struggled with health, you got to give credit to Anthony Edwards. So I believe that's a name you guys got to be on the lookout for to make a leap sometime here in the near future. Sometime here in the near future. Shout out to the NBA insiders on this list nonetheless, though. And shout out to LaMelo Ball. I don't want this to come off as I'm being harsh on him. I get the hype that's surrounding him, but sometimes it's a lot. And I do believe that a lot of these NBA insiders and media personnel are falling victim to the hype train. And I do believe this list in particular fell victim to it by putting him at number 3. Not the top 25, under 25. LaMelo Ball should not be at number 3. Like I mentioned before, somewhere in that 6 to 8 range is more appropriate, but top 3, nah, not yet. Not yet. All right, folks, as we begin to wrap up this segment of the podcast, we got one more segment to go. It's your favorite segment. We're going to come back, and we're going to give someone their flowers right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Shaq Scott. Thank you guys for joining us today. It's been a great show thus far. We opened the show talking about the Masters Tournament, the PGA as a whole. We then talked about Megan Rapinoe versus Draymond Green. We then broke down and went all in detail for this ESPN top 25 under 25 list. And now we've made it to your favorite part of the show. Your favorite, my favorite, our new favorite segment. Time to give someone their flowers. And if you're brand new to the show, this is a part of the show where we give someone their flowers. It's a figure of speech in which we're honoring someone, giving someone their flowers, paying respect to them while they still can hear it, acknowledge it, and be grateful of it. So we're here to give someone their flowers. And today is no different. Today we got to give someone their flowers. And today I want to give flowers to the WNBA. I made mention of the WNBA earlier in the show. We talked about Megan Rapinoe and the WNBA. But today, folks, the WNBA and Nike are getting some flowers from us, Shaq Scott, here at the GSMC Sports Podcast and the GSMC Podcast Network. We're here to give the WNBA and Nike their flowers. Why, you may be asking yourself, why are we giving Nike their flowers? Why are we giving the WNBA their flowers? Because today, or if you're whenever or however you may be listening to this April 8th, the WNBA released their 2021 25th anniversary celebration jerseys for the upcoming season. And folks, these jerseys are fire. Fire. Fire emoji. Fire emoji. Fire emoji. Fire. If you haven't seen them yet, please, I highly encourage you, go on social media right now. Look at these jerseys. Look them up. They are gorgeous. Or you can follow us on social media, our GSMC Sports Podcast, or on all of our social media platforms. I'll be sure to tweet out a link and a picture of these jerseys. And us here at the GSMC Sports Podcast want to give the flowers to the WNBA and Nike for these jerseys. Not just for aesthetically them being pleasing, but for the meaning behind them. And then we're also going to break down some of my favorites. And I'll tell you some of my not so favorites. And some that I probably will be most likely to go out and purchase myself. But first, I just want to talk about these jerseys. And it's 25 years for the WNBA. Let's first celebrate that. The 25th anniversary of the WNBA. I mentioned earlier, Megan Rapinoe was talking about Draymond Green and the women's pay disparity and the pay gap issues and the inequality issues and the discrimination that women face. But let's clap it up for the WNBA for 21 years. For 25 years. That's a big accomplishment. And that lets me also know and should let you know this is still a young league. This is still a young league. So the growth that they've seen thus far is amazing. We only got far more to go. So let's support while we can. Support it. And we're going to start off by supporting it by reading this article here by ESPN.com. We're going to shout out Katie Barnes, ESPNW.com. An article that discusses the WNBA and their 25th anniversary jerseys. And the article goes as follows. Glass ceilings in the Space Needle, the 19th Amendment, and equality. As part of the WNBA's 25th anniversary season, in 2021, players will wear new Nike jerseys with individual messages and city-specific flourishes for each of the 12 teams. On Thursday, Nike unveiled the collection, which adds a highly anticipated third jersey option, Rebel Edition, to the team's Heroine Edition, Home, and Explorer Edition away uniforms. All of the jerseys have a 1 out of 144 notation to represent the number of players in the WNBA. Front numbers have returned, and for the first time since 2015, white jerseys will be back in the WNBA. Previous uniforms have followed a template with only different colorways and sponsorships to distinguish them. The 2021 uniforms will include unique fonts, patterns, and symbols. You can't minimize the impact that the third uniform is going to have on the overall aesthetic of the league, Chicago Sky Guard Diamond DeShields said. When you make it to the professional level, you want to feel like that experience is elite. Part of that is definitely in the apparel and the uniform. I think that it's really going to be an eye-opening and bring more attention to us this season, which ultimately is what we want. The uniform collection was designed in consideration of player feedback and league insights. The player feedback focused on the fit of previous uniforms and the need for differentiation across the league. I'm a gear person's worst nightmare because I tuck and I roll and I twist and I do everything else. Reigning WNBA MVP, Las Vegas Aces forward A'ja Wilson. But you could tell Nike was definitely like, we're going to try to make sure A'ja doesn't have to do any of that. Players in the WNBA range in height from 5'6" to 6'9", and there is a variety of body types. In seasons past, many players have resorted to rolling their shorts and tucking their jerseys underneath the shoulder straps of their athletic bras to get their uniforms to fit right. With the new uniforms, players can choose between 3 necklines, round neck, V-neck, and a new hybrid victory neckline that is exclusive to the WNBA. The shorts have been redesigned with more room through the thigh and the glutes, and the jerseys have wider armholes and a wider body to allow for more room in the abdomen and chest. I've always subscribed to look good, feel good, play good, Seattle Storm guard Sue Bird said. If it fits right and it looks good, you're a little more comfortable, which means you're a little more confident. It sounds silly, but it matters. In addition to the uniforms, Nike also is releasing a suite of products in team colors, vests, t-shirts, pants, hoodies, and more for players to customize their on-court and off-court looks, as well as Team 13 collections, the first WNBA fan apparel collection offered by Nike. Right now, we have the biggest and largest and deepest women's organization focused on making sure we're tapping into all opportunities for her, said Sonia Henning, Nike's vice president of league partnerships in North America and a former WNBA player. No surprise, that led us to the most comprehensive WNBA apparel offering Nike has ever made and probably the WNBA has ever seen. They're going to show up with the new practice gear, new travel gear, and new lifestyle gear. Much of the new apparel will be available to fans online and through Dick's Sporting Goods, which gave fans an inadvertent sneak peek when some of the merchandise made it onto shelves a few weeks early. With leaks come conversations, come storylines, come chatter, and I think that's good for growth, Sue Bird said. When something gets leaked, there's an asterisk of importance, and it's kind of cool to have a conversation around a WNBA jersey feeling that way. And then the article then allows us to scroll and look at some of these jerseys. And before we talk about the jerseys and their aesthetic, their look, how about we shout out the WNBA and Nike overall for doing this? And something that was mentioned in this article is probably something that all of us don't even think about as a casual fan. WNBA players for years have had to roll up their jerseys to fit their body dimensions. Are you kidding me? Imagine LeBron James having to roll up the sleeves of his jersey to fit his dimensions. Matter of fact, when the NBA released those jersey-style jerseys where they had the sleeves to them, when they had the sleeve jerseys, remember LeBron ripping the jersey because it wasn't comfortable? How quickly did that jersey go away? We did not see that jersey ever again. Those jerseys did not make it past that year. That's how quick we saw the turnaround on those. The WNBA, however, has had to make do with what they had. And they're just now getting jerseys that fit these women's body dimensions and their athletic bras and whatever unique tweaks that need to be made are just now being made. That's a shame. It's great that we have it, but it's a shame they had to wait this long. So I'm interested to see the lasting effects that this is going to have on the WNBA. Because just from the outside looking in, before even looking at the jerseys, reading this article got me hyped. It got me hyped. To think that the WNBA is going to have the most comfortable these women are going to feel on the court in a long, long time is great. I agree with Sue Bird with the idea of look good, feel good, play good. And that goes in all aspects of life. I was raised that you dress for the job you want. Present yourself accordingly. Don't come looking like you just rolled out of bed. So if the WNBA players can look good, they're going to play good because we already know they can play good. We already know they can play good. Now they're going to look good in the process. Shout out to these women. Shout out to them overall. Let's go back to the fact of Nike talking about the options that these women are going to have. They went from having a standard uniform for all of them. Yeah, the uniforms weren't completely trash. They looked pretty good. But they definitely weren't on par with the NBA. But now Nike is offering these women different variations for necklines. They got a choice from a round neck, a V-neck, and a hybrid victory neckline that only the WNBA is going to have. That's huge. Because you know what that says to me? That says Nike believes in the WNBA. So we mentioned earlier in the show about resources and having companies buy into the idea of women's sports. This is buying in. This is how you make an impact. A huge organization like Nike being a partner of the WNBA already, buying into the idea of these women being comfortable and looking good and playing good, that's huge. It's huge. And they didn't stop there. They could have just stopped with the jerseys. No. They're bringing a suite of products outside of the jerseys. They got vests, t-shirts, pants, hoodies. So that off the court, the players can look good too. And you know what that brings? More eyes. In this social media era, everybody loves to post their outfit. Oh, this got to go on the gram. This fit got to go on the gram. This is drippy. This look good. This got to go on the gram. And that's bringing eyes. So when these players show up to the game, we got whole designated kick cams and outfit cams dedicated to player entrances now. In the past, we didn't have that. We got that now. We all are looking and either judging or applauding players like Russell Westbrook for the way he comes into the game. And now that shift is going over to the WNBA, and it's great. I love it. I love it. It's about time. Give these women their just due. It is about time. So now we can expect Sue Bird to be extra drippy as she's walking into the game. She already was, but now we got more eyes on her. Shout out to the women, man. Shout out to the women. All right. So now, let's go and look at these jerseys, man, because if you have not, at the time of this recording, I encourage you, pause the episode, look up these jerseys, because these jerseys are fire. Completely fire. And once you look at these jerseys, you're going to see, okay, I see why Shaq's giving the WNBA and Nike their flowers. You got to. All right, so I'm going to try to do my best, since this is a visual medium, to describe what these jerseys look like, just from the outside looking in, until you can get your hands on what they look like yourself. So we're going to start with the Atlanta Dream. So we got a black jersey, blue trim, ATL with the star right above the L, the Nike swoosh above the A, and then the numbers on the front. Gorgeous looking jersey. Gorgeous jersey. Gorgeous. There's some silver hues in there as well. Platinum. And the description for this jersey says, no team made more noise a year ago than the Dream. And this special jersey comes with the thunder of black and blue. The silver hues throughout the top represent the platinum and gold records produced in the city's vibrant music scene. So this is a shout out to Atlanta being the home for music right now. So shout out to the Atlanta Dream for that jersey. So we go to the Chicago Sky. In their jersey, we got a baby blue jersey. Ooh, this jersey is fire, y'all. This jersey is fire. The description for the jersey, well, let me do my best to describe it first. I'm looking at a baby blue jersey. We got some pinstripes going through. It says Chi-Town on the front, Nike swoosh, number on the front, white lettering. Gorgeous jersey. Gorgeous. The description goes, in popping blue colors, the Sky's jersey screams action. For us, they talk about the groundbreaking, glass-shattering women who have accomplished things in the city of Chicago, the Shield said. That's something that's very specific to the city. There's a lot of pride in the uniforms now. When we put them on, it will feel much different. Shout out to the Chicago Sky. Now, Connecticut Sun. Now, this jersey is very unique. Very unique because on the front of the jersey is the word Keasusk. Keasusk. Now, Keasusk is on the front of the Connecticut Sun's jersey. You may be saying, what the heck does that mean? And I highly encourage you again to go look at this for yourself. It'll make a lot more sense. But the description says the Suns uniform is inspired by the Mohegan tribe, featuring the Mohegan word for sun. Keasusk means sun, front and center. So that makes sense. Now we know Keasusk means sun. Therefore, henceforth, Keasusk being on the front of the Connecticut Sun jersey. The pattern of the taping down the sides is the nod to the trail of life that connects past and future generations. That's dope. That's dope. We done went into the indigenous tribe and the indigenous families, and we're incorporating that into the WNBA. That's huge. That's huge. Moving on to the Dallas Wings. This is not my favorite jersey, but still nice nonetheless. I'm looking at a green jersey here, and the description says, this jersey is designed as an homage to the World War II P-40 Warhawk, a plane manufactured in Texas and test flown by women Air Force service pilots. As for that base color, we're told it's a military-grade green. Now, that's the only thing that kind of turns me off from this jersey is just the shade of the jersey, but having a background on it now, knowing that it's a nod to the women Air Force service pilots, I'm all in. All in. Shout out to the Dallas Wings. Indiana Fever. Now, this jersey is literally trending on Twitter right now because it is a Stranger Things themed jersey. So if you haven't seen the Netflix hit show, Stranger Things, I highly encourage you to look it up, and you will see why the Indiana Fever knocked this jersey out of the park. It's hard to miss the Stranger Things feel to the Fever's Rebel Edition. The Netflix series is set to the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, and these uniforms bring it all to life. The bold font reminds us of riding bikes, stirring up trouble, and trying not to get caught in the upside down. The Indiana Fever paid homage to the Stranger Things, a fictional show. How dope is that, folks? How dope is that? How dope is that? Shout out to the Indiana Fever. Shout out to the Indiana Fever. The Las Vegas Aces are up next. They got a black jersey with some gold trim on it. And their description goes, the 2020 runners-up will debut an elegant black jersey with gold trim that is adorned with tiny diamonds, a nod to the playing cards found in the Vegas casinos. It's not just a different look, Wilson said. It's pretty unique to us, and it looks like a high-end designer. That's Vegas as a whole. It's high-end and entertainment. Shout out to Las Vegas and the Las Vegas Aces. That's dope. We got the Los Angeles Sparks here, the Minnesota Lynx, the New York Liberty, Phoenix Mercury, Seattle Storm, Washington Mystics, and for the sake of time, I'm gonna only cover these last two. And I highly encourage you to look this up yourself. But these two jerseys are pretty dope to me, and they stand out to me. So we'll go to the New York Liberty. So I'm looking at a baby blue jersey here, what it looks like from my view, some teal and pinkish trim, or I could say that's copper. And the word on the front says equality. Equality is on the front of this jersey. And the description goes as follows. The Liberty's Rebel Edition brings the heat with the vibrant color often associated with the oxidized copper of the Statue of Liberty herself. Teal, for all of you non-chemists out there. And her torch helps highlight the promise of equality for all. That is dope. The word equality is on the front of this jersey, and the I for the word equality is the torch from the Statue of Liberty. How dope is that? How dope is that? That is cool. That is so cool. So cool. I'm literally in awe right now. And the last jersey I see here, this jersey just looks so cool to me, is the jersey from the Washington Mystics. On the front, it says Rise. We got some pink and blue going on here, some pinstripe action. And it goes as follows. The Rise panel on the front is meant to empower women to rise up for what they believe in, said Tanya Flynn, Nike's vice president of women's apparel design. In the strip below that is the text of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote in the constitutional script. The women's WNBA literally have taken upon themselves to incorporate women empowerment in so many ways and have included the 19th Amendment in a jersey, folks. A jersey. I'm sorry if you're not as blown away as I am, but how can you not be, folks? This is amazing. Amazing. So we got to give them their flowers. Give them their flowers. Women's, WNBA, Nike, all who were involved, creative directors, all who were involved in this whole entire process, consultants, everybody. Here are your flowers from Shaq, Scott, and us here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, because you did an amazing job. I'm absolutely blown away by this, folks. This is amazing. Amazing. Shout out to the women. Shout out to Nike. Shout out to the WNBA. And shout out to you folks for listening. If you haven't already, please look up these jerseys. I'm going to be purchasing one. It's a matter of which one I can get my hands on. If they don't sell out, which one I'll be able to get my hands on as quick as possible, because these jerseys I don't see lasting for long. These jerseys are going to go off the shelves quick. Off the shelves quick. But shout out to the WNBA and Nike. Here are your flowers. Thank you guys for listening. However you may be listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Shaq Scott. As always, folks, we appreciate you for joining us. Wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, in your car, we thank you guys for keep tuning in. If you're a first-time listener, thank you for listening. Come on back. You know we got you covered for everything. We talked about WNBA. We talked about Megan Rapinoe, Draymond Green. We talked about the Masters Tournament. We talked about NBA. We talk about it all here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. We got you covered. We got you covered. So make sure you come on back. Make sure you also, please remember to subscribe to the show. Write a nice review. It really helps us out. And if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. GSMC Sports Podcast or the GSMC Podcast Network to make it easy for you to follow us on all platforms. But until next time, folks, I am Shaq Scott, and I'm out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.